Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this HCTalk podcast. As always, I'm your host, Lance Gormley, and our special guest on the program today is Director of Communications for Harvey County, Don Gruver. How are you doing today, Don?
Doing great, Lance. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on the program. Don actually reached out after he had seen that we were doing a series when it comes to first responders and said, hey, I got a question for you. Have you ever considered what I do or what we do as something that would fall under this category, because we are under this category in so many words. And I thought, you know what, man, I'm glad you reached out, because no, I hadn't thought about reaching out and during this series to have somebody that in your capacity that comes on to talk about what you all do. And by and large, I would have to say, and I don't know, you may agree, that you're the often forgotten first responder individuals that are what we were talking about it. What was the actual thing that you said? Because you said it better than me.
The unseen voices behind the radio. Yes. And the phones.
Yeah.
And that's pretty common. I mean, when you talk about first responders, a lot of times 911 dispatchers are overlooked in that. Yeah. And they truly are the first responders, and they do a very important job, and they're the ones that get the police and fire and medics to you. Yeah. So they serve an important part of that wheel.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we were coming into this interview, I was thinking about things that I might ask, because generally speaking, I don't give people a list of questions that I'll ask in advance or anything, and there is kind of a format that we hold to, but I was just not knowing fully what your day-to-day is like, or what the people's day-to-day is like. I just thought, wow, where you have one officer, right, that might show up to a call and just that call. Then you have another officer that shows up to another call, or maybe a firefighter or EMS. And so even though that is split out amongst those individuals, you all take every single call.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're juggling multiple things at once and keeping it all coordinated and straight, and they have a thankless job sometimes.
Thankless job. I will, hopefully, throughout this podcast, people will be able to understand more about what you all do and be able to, instead of not putting a focus on what your job is, they will do that more in the future.
Absolutely.
Fair enough. Okay, Don. So how we always start the program out is just to give the audience a little bit about who you are, where you came from, maybe what your occupation was. How'd you find yourself where you are today, Don?
It's been a long road, but started out when I was in college, going to Hutch JUCO back in the 79-80. At that time, my sister's boyfriend was wanting to be a cop, and he was taking the EMT course. And at that time, EMT, emergency medical technician, was something fairly new in Kansas. There weren't a lot of them out there, but he wanted to take that to enhance his chances of being in law enforcement at some point. He wanted somebody to take the class with him, and so he talked me into it. I'd had first aid and CPR, thought, why not? And so I took the class and passed it. And after I graduated from college, I actually majored in radio broadcasting in college. I wanted to be the next Walter Cronkite of radio back then.
I love it.
But figured out very quickly that radio wasn't really the avenue I wanted to follow. And so I thought, got this EMT license. Let's see where that goes. Ended up going to Pratt, worked there for a couple of years, met my wife, got married, moved to Hayes, worked there for about 4 more years until back injury took me out. I still got the sore back to thank for that. But I did a little bit of volunteer fire work in there in the meantime. But once I got told, you're done with EMS, your back can't take any more of this, thought, what do I do now? And started applying for dispatch jobs around the state. Thought, well, I'll go to the other side of the microphone, the dark side.
Yeah,
and I went and interviewed at Emporia, Kansas City, a few other places around, and ended up getting hired right there in Hayes where I was living, and started in dispatch in 1989 for the Hayes Police Department that ran 911 at that time, and worked there for 9.5 years, and then came to Newton. I've been here ever since, been the director since 2014.
Okay, so because you've been in this field for as long as you have, something that I'm old enough I'm old enough to have known, I guess, that there didn't used to be a 911 service. Can you kind of give the history on that? Because I think even in my youngest days, there was no such thing as call 911. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. And then they rolled that out, and now it's something or a service that everybody just takes for granted. So can you give me a little bit of history on that?
Well, yeah, even in my life career, going back to the early 80s, when I was a volunteer firefighter in South Hutchinson and first responder, and then into Pratt, you didn't call 911. Everybody had a 7-digit number that you dialed. And like when I was at Pratt, we would they would call the number for the ambulance service, and if we were in the office, we'd answer it. If not, they would roll over to the police department dispatcher downtown, who would answer the calls and then holler at us on the radio to take the call. But there was no 911. 911 came to be in 1968 down in Alabama. It was the first 911 call that they ever made when AT&T put that together. But it was probably mid to late 80s to 90s before 911 really became a thing in Kansas. And like I said, I worked at EMS down in Pratt, and they never had 911 the whole time I was there from 81 to 83. And then I went to Hayes and worked EMS there for a while, and I don't think they necessarily had 911 at first, but they might have. But then when I started working there in 89, we had basic 911, which meant we got the phone number. That was it. And then by 91, we went to the enhanced 911, where you had the streets all named, and the address would show up on the screens in front of us. And came down here to Newton in 98 and started working there. And in the early 2000s, wireless became a big thing, and we started having to get phase 1 and phase 2, where we actually can see where the phone's at for the most part. And it's just our career has become so technology driven. Everything's just always changing. Now we have text to 911. They're talking about wanting to have video, which I'm not a big fan of. I don't think we necessarily need that. If we can talk to people and get the information, they'll tell us everything we need to know to tell the responders on what to bring and how fast to get there. But this big push to make sure that we have video in the centers is not something I'm really a big fan of, but I think it's gonna come to us whether we want it or not.
Yeah, I cannot imagine a time, and I'm just saying, this is me. I can't imagine a time where you're like, okay, I need to call the fire department. 316 to, you know what I mean? You catch what I'm saying, right? And granted, there was a time where people would memorize numbers. Okay?
Or back then you only had to dial maybe even the last 4 numbers a lot of times, things like that. But having to know what's the fire department's number, what's the police department's number, what's the sheriff's department's number, what's the ambulance number, and from our side of it, even the changes over time. I've done everything from pencil and paper to very basic attempts at computer systems to now our full-blown computer-aided dispatch or CAD systems that we use to track everything that we do. And it's been a ride.
Yeah. So going back, you had mentioned that you were in first responder. You were a first responder in the past as a firefighter volunteer and even EMT. So just taking you back to that period of time, and if that's obviously where your heart was at, right, to serve and to be there when somebody needed some assistance. Can you garner just like maybe a memory or two about why maybe you had chosen to pursue that career?
It sounds kind of corny to say, but we get a lot of when we interview people that want a dispatch job. I just want to help people. But really, I think that's what it comes down to. Like I said, I'd taken CPR and first aid classes in high school, or even before that, possibly, and just that was always seemed drawn to that. And I think just making the progression once I couldn't actually work out in the field because of my back, and going to the other side of the microphone and dispatching, that's it's just been something that's just kind of always been part of my DNA. Is you want to do what you can to to help people and save lives.
Yeah. So you suffered a back injury. A lot of people have life events that change the trajectory of where they're going. Right. So upon, and I don't want you to get personal on what happened or anything like that, but when you were told, hey, I know this is your life's work, I know this is what you want to do, but yeah, this ain't going to work anymore. Your body's not going to hold out, or this whatever it is that took place with you, just you can't do this job anymore. Where were you at in your mind at that point in time? Did you have like feeling of loss and just what am I going to do, or are you somebody that just kind of moves on your feet and says, well, I can't do that, I'll go do something else? But was there a point in which you felt lost based upon the fact that you're not going to be able to at that time help people in the same form and fashion that you had?
Oh, absolutely. I loved being EMT, and of course this was early to mid 80s. AIDS, hepatitis, some of these other things were just not a thing then. We did what we did. And, the 2-man cots, that's probably the big reason I have my bad back is, now they have these electronic roll-in cots. We didn't have those back then. It was all muscle and lifting the right way. And I probably didn't a lot of the times. But, when the doctor said, you're done, you can't keep doing this, it was devastating. But, got a wife, you got kids, got to do something. And I actually did respiratory therapy at the hospital for a couple of years while I was applying for dispatch jobs, because I want to stay in emergency services. But at the time, EMT to respiratory therapy was kind of a natural progression then, and that was real easy to get into, and I did that and enjoyed it for a couple of years. But I was looking for dispatch jobs, and I did several interviews and several application processes, and got into that, and now I've been there 37 years.
A whole nother lifetime. Yeah, that's cool. I'm interested, right? I had mentioned this briefly earlier on the podcast, but you go from being somebody that is getting a call from an individual that says, hey, you need to go here, this person's in need, this is where we're at, this is the information we have, go. So then you're the recipient of that call, and then you act. But now, or even at the beginning, you switched roles to be the person that is on the other end of that line, telling people where to go and what to do.
It's a little difficult, and especially from the EMS world, from going from a hands-on responder to now taking the calls over the phone and trying to direct people. It's a different world, and you've got to put that hands-on behind you a little bit. I mean, it's good to have some of that knowledge and background. Nurses are good about throwing out big words when they're calling for an ambulance, and most of our people don't know what they're talking about. If you've been in the field, you know that, but to just, you don't have it in front of you, you're not looking at it and trying to diagnose what's going on. You got to take what they're giving you over the phone, and so it's a hard transition sometimes to put that behind you and focus on how you're being trained now to listen to what you're being told, listen to what's going on in the background, and work with that and go off of what you hear there, rather than actually seeing it in front of you.
Yeah. And so then, is there ever a time when that's happening with you that, because you've been in that experience, like oftentimes, I hate to say liken it to like a sport, but if you've ever played a sport and then you're listening to what's going on, it's easy for us to, in our mind's eye, I don't know if we would call it our imagination, but to be able to see in our mind, in our mind's eye, what might be transpiring. Does that happen for you, having been there, done that, to then being in a situation where you can't see what's going on, but...
I think that's where, we really try to train our people to hone their listening skills and their interrogation skills to get out of the caller what information we need to pass along to first responders. And it's kind of a common thing that people often envision what they can't see far worse than it really is. But that's, I think, where it kind of comes back here to just teaching our people to ask the right questions, get the right information, and be able to pass that along so that the first responders kind of know what they're getting into. And then going back to what you said earlier about the video, I still don't see how video is going to help that, because again, people being descriptive and answering the questions and telling us what we need to hear will get the job done. People break out a camera, they're going to show you stuff that we just really don't need to see. And even though we're not on scene, taking these calls can be very traumatic. Yeah. And PTSD is a very real thing in 911 as well. And I think people need to understand that they're not just heartless, careless droids sitting there answering the phone. These are humans. They have feelings too, and sometimes what they hear and see can deeply affect them.
Yeah,
I think we saw that in the Excel shooting. The 3 dispatchers that were on duty that day, none of them are still working in 911.
And I'm familiar with that situation, and I could not imagine being on the other end of the line with you're going about your typical day, and all of a sudden you're getting all these calls from different individuals. In fact, your system's probably being overwhelmed.
Absolutely.
And at that point in time, you're hearing all of the chaos that's unfolding, and people are calling you and they're pleading and begging for help, right? And your job is to ensure that you're getting them to communicate in that moment of crisis what you need to know so you can help them the best way possible.
And I think that's a good point, because one of the things I thought of while you were saying that is a lot of times some of the kickback we get from people is, why do you ask so many questions? And again, we need to know what we're getting into, what the first responders are getting into, and make sure that they're taking enough equipment, the right equipment, and that they know what they're walking into. And Excel was a good example of that. Okay, when you're getting nonstop, every line's lit up for 15, 20 minutes, that goes out the window. You get the very basics information. Where are you? What's going on? What do you see? And then move on to the next call. And when it doesn't stop coming, for 15, 20, 30 minutes like that, it's rough.
Yeah. And you all are sort of like a language translator, right? Almost. It's you have somebody that's telling you their perspective, and then from there, isn't there a form, like a transfer of information and communication to the first responder and what you're telling the first responder? Or am I just totally wrong on that? Because I can't think that it's like Lance calls 911 and says, hey, I'm at work, there's an active shooter, this person is come in here, this is what they look like, and then you just regurgitate verbatim everything I said to the first responder. That's not how it works, is it?
No, I mean, you want to keep it short, brief, and to the point. You don't want to take up a lot of airtime. So there is some of that. But by and large, and we also tell people, don't throw your own opinions into what you hear. Tell them what they said for the most part. I mean, we can leave out the 4-letter words and I mean,
that's not funny, but yeah,
what they think of the person that's beating them up, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, getting the basics. Who are they? What do they look like? What are they wearing? Do they have a weapon? Or is alcohol involved? Those type of questions to get answered. And the other thing that I'd like to add on that too is, people often say that all those questions are delaying the response. No, they're not. We're getting the response out, especially if it's a high priority call. If I'm sitting next to another dispatcher and I hear him say, "Are you sure they're not breathing?" I'm looking at the call and CAD or picking up and listening in, and we're getting the ambulance going right then and there while they're still asking all those questions. And one bit of technology that's out there that I think we want to take a very good look at is what they call automated voice dispatching. It's a computer generated voice that actually pages the call out for fire and EMS. Hutch has done it. Hayes, Salina, there's several other cities in the state. I think something, because again, that will cut a little bit of time off. Dispatcher, especially for as busy as we are here, they won't have to take the time to page that out. The computer will do it for them based on what they're putting in the computer on the CAD system. It'll page that call out. So I think that's one piece of technology that I think we need to really seriously look at to cut a little bit of the time down, that a dispatcher won't have to stop what they're doing and manually page that out. The computer will do it for them.
And your job has, I say your job, but the advent of what we talked about, which was 911 and then dispatch and how that operates, that has probably just, I can't imagine the amount of lives that might have saved due to an increase in response time. And as technology has evolved over the course of this time, from calling your 4-digit number or calling your 7-digit number and trying to keep all that straight as far as the person calling, to then have that transfer of information over, to then have it over, and then make sure that everybody's getting where they need to get in order for a person to get help, that's got to have changed over the course of the last 20 years, has it not?
Absolutely. I think, just being able to have that coordinated response. Again, we're used to call a person sitting down at the fire station to sound the alarm. You can call in the police station, and we still fight that to this day, especially in some of the smaller towns. People want to call the police station and not call 911. They're afraid to call 911 for whatever reason, and we still fight that. That the officer's not typically sitting in the station very much, and if they're not there, that they don't have officers on 24/7. Call 911. It's okay. We know if somebody's working. If not, we're going to send the next closest unit, whether it's a deputy or someone else that can get there to take care of the situation. We know who's on and who's not and where they're at, so we can get the help there. Calling the station and leaving a message on their answering machine is not going to get you a response. And well, can I call the officer's cell phone? Well, that's okay, but what if he's off duty on vacation, out of state? How's that going to delay the response?
Or doing something different in the moment. I mean, yeah, it's so just personally in your life, you mentioned an event that took place that we're both aware of that then, affected these individuals to where there might not be the full reason, but could potentially be a reason, and maybe one of them might say, no, that's not the reason at all, it just wasn't for me, or my life changed to move on. But can you recall a situation where you felt helpless in doing what you do?
Oh, thinking back through the years, I mean, there's been a lot of situations like that. Some of the things that come in mind, I worked EMS in Pratt. I did 2 SIDS baby deaths in one day, and one of them was beyond help when we got there, and we basically just transported the baby to a funeral home. The second one was, being in EMS, part of the family. It was a park ranger, wildlife and parks ranger's kid, and we ran a code on him, took him to the hospital, and unfortunately they didn't make it, and then a few years later, I answered a SIDS call working EMS in Hayes on my own kid. And, it's, times like that. There was a 911 call that we had from a local farmer who had accidentally run over his wife with a tractor, and he was had lost it, and understandably so. And all I could understand on the phone was wife and tractor. Fortunately, that was in the days when people still had landline phones, and we were able to get an address and get people going there. But knowing that there was really nothing we could do, but your heart just goes out when somebody he's just lost his whole world, and he's screaming and crying in the phone, and all I can do is send help, get people there, and see if there's anything we can do, and to get him the help that he needs.
Because at that point in time, yeah, that's tough. I personally don't know how I would be able to hear and experience some of the things that you all hear and experience day to day, and stay, I mean, I'm just being honest, stay in it.
It's a process. Like we just hired. We were trying to hire 3. We ended up getting 2 hired. 1 backed out the last minute, but we have 2 that started training Monday. And that training process for us for 911 is about a 5-month process, of 40 hours a week, for 5 months, and getting them acclimated to all the systems, all the things they'll need to do, and getting used to what they're going to be exposed to, and just hoping that they stick with it. Without getting too far off that question track a little bit, but we have had a very good luck here in Harvey County with not having huge turnover until recently. I've got 37 years in it. We've got another dispatcher who's got almost 40 years. We had one retire a few years ago that had 40 years. We've got a lot in the teens and 20s. Here lately, though, that has changed. People aren't in it for the long haul. We're lucky if we can keep people 2 or 3 years, and that's unfortunate because I think it's a great career, and obviously people like it here because they stay here for the most part. But that tide is changing, and the long-term employees aren't there. But when we invest, 5 months into training somebody and getting them acclimated to the job and hope they stick with it. And we've had a lot of people that have over the years, but lately it seems like that bottom, handful of people is just a revolving door. They're not sticking with it. But we do everything we can to try to keep them involved and integrated into the system so that they stick around. Right. But it's not for everybody.
Yeah, and it might be something that and we do hear that, right, when it comes to first responders. And I don't know what it is necessarily this day and age. There's probably for each individual department of, if you're fire EMS, if you're law enforcement, if you're in your situation, that they're, like you said, it's not for everybody, but at the same time, it takes a little bit of time being in that field before an individual makes the determination that, I'm just not sure this is for me. There's a whole lot of things I could do that doesn't involve some of the stuff. But not to go negative, right? Or because I don't look at what we've just talked about as negative necessarily, but I don't want people to look at the situation and say, "Oh man, that's tough. I take my hat off to you, but that's not for me." But surely you could take away some successes. I mean, I'm thinking on the other side of it is, well. Surely, can you provide an experience or maybe a few experiences, if you'd like, of where you went in, this happened, and you walked away really knowing and having a sense of accomplishment or a sense of I was able to help in this situation and it turned out good? Because you have to, you guys are in law enforcement, so you have to know how this turned out. Right, the end result is, I get a call, I dispatch, I'm having the conversation with this person, and then, they get off the phone at some point in time with you when EMS or whoever arrives. So there's got to be an element of, well, I don't know exactly how that turned out.
We get that a lot, not knowing the end of the story. But one of the things that I think is very special about Harvey County is we have a very, very good working relationship with our responder agencies. There are counties out there to this day that you don't have one fire chief that'll talk to another fire chief or a police chief that'll talk to a firefighter. But in this county, we don't have that. We work very well together. Our fire chiefs group meets every other month, and we're part of that, us in emergency management. And we sit down, we work things out, and we talk together. So we don't have 10 different ways to dispatch a structure fire. It's the same across the board. And the same thing with what you described is that, by working together and understanding that, we know how each other, what our expectations are, and what the job entails, and working together to accomplish that goal, working hand in hand, is what makes the difference. And I think, going back to your question, there are examples of how it all works. In those situations, getting the right help there and getting them the answers they know. From the dispatcher perspective, people don't call us when they're having a good day. They usually call us on their worst day when something's happened that they just can't grasp. It's overwhelming. And we do get a lot of calls from people that are at the end of their rope and they don't know what to do. And a lot of times it's a cry for help. They don't really want to hurt themselves, but they know they need help. And to be able to talk to them and find out where they're at and what they've done and what their plan is, and get them the help that they need. On the other end of the scale, you have someone that's terminally ill that calls, and they just want somebody to come clean the mess up. And I think we've all been there at one time or another. But to be able to talk to someone and show them there are options, that this is not your best and only option. And I think it's in our field, it's not a matter of if, it's when, because it's going to happen, and it can happen fairly frequently. But I think to be able to talk somebody down off the ledge, or to talk a grandfather through delivering his grandbaby out in the middle of nowhere when the ambulance is 15, 20 minutes away, those are the moments that say, this really is worth it, isn't it?
Yeah. Because so that opens up something entirely. So I'm thinking to myself, I asked the question about like a reward or accomplishment. So there's got to be in this hundreds of thousands of calls, that you all take, and you really are the first responders, right? And so in that window, from the second it takes to make the call to somebody answering, and then whoever first responder arriving to give aid however necessary they can give aid, there's a window, there's a critical time there, right? Whether it's a minute or 4 minutes or 5 minutes, and what you all do can change the course of the entire situation, right? Just by being on the line, like, hey, I come upon a car accident, and I'm the first one here, and I want to help somebody, but this person's having X, Y, or Z take place. Then you all can dispatch who needs to be there. They're on their way, but then you can guide me through maybe how to even help this person to like stop bleeding,
right.
or like you're talking about somebody that's thinking about self-harm. The conversation that you have in those critical moments, that before somebody arrives, I mean, you truly are the first responders.
Yeah, we're all EMD trained, emergency medical dispatch trained. So yes, we can give first aid, CPR, childbirth instructions, delivering Narcan injections, EpiPen injections. That's all part of our EMD protocols that are approved by our medical director and the EMS directors. So yes, we can give those kind of instructions for medical calls. Domestic disturbances, when you have someone calling and screaming that they just had a fight with their wife, and they're going at it, and they're spending more time screaming at each other than they are giving you the information. Just calm, repetitiveness, talking them down so that it doesn't get to the point where somebody says, I've had enough, and they pull out a gun.
Yeah.
You want to de-escalate this so the officers aren't walking into World War III. They're walking into hopefully a situation where they're calm and they're able to talk, and they're not losing their cool and wanting to take it out on somebody else that walks in the door.
Communication is key. I gotta say communication is key. I've said on the program before with other people, education, communication, and just understanding that how you talk to an individual, therefore how they receive that, are two different parts, right? You have to very quickly understand, how is this person receiving what I'm saying? How do I say this in a way that this person will receive what I'm saying? Because you could very easily, by saying the wrong thing,
set them off,
escalate it, you know? And so, so that's got to be a lot of pressure.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time in our training teaching new dispatchers how to do that. Don't fall in the trap. If they're yelling at you and calling you names, don't yell at them and call them names back. Talk slow, talk calm, talk quietly. Make them want to have to stop screaming to be able to hear you and listen to you, to hear what you're having to say, and bringing them down. If you start talking to them the same way you're talking to you, nobody's going to accomplish anything, and you're not going to get the help there.
Yeah.
So just being able to, like I said, de-escalate, bring the situation down, get them to calm down, start thinking rationally instead of emotionally, is all the keys to making everybody go home safe at the end of the night.
And there's no way to just look at somebody and go, in their moment of crisis, right? Whatever that might be, that you can't just look at somebody and say, or talk to somebody and say, okay, you're thinking emotionally. You need to start thinking logically and calmly.
No, you gotta,
I mean, there's no way to, like, you know what I mean? You catch what I'm saying? It's like, there's got to be some psychology behind it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like I said, being able to say the right things at the right time and get the guide the situation to where you want it to go.
Yeah. What's something that you can take away from your career up to date that you really believe is one of the most rewarding things about what you do?
I think just the knowledge that I have helped people. I have made somebody's day better by doing what I do. I think even from me personally, beyond that, I take care of our county radio system. We've been through several ideations of CAD systems over the years. Being a part of that, I'm a techno geek. I'll admit it. Being part of that and putting together systems that help everybody do the job better, and make sure that they can talk to each other, they can work with each other, they can get the information they need when they need it, and then serving the public, and the public knows when they call 911, they're getting the best of the best.
Yeah.
From one end to the other.
Yeah. How have you personally? Because, like I said, I don't think we went dark there necessarily, but I think just having a conversation, realizing that, being a dispatcher or in communications is equally just as difficult at times as being on the scene, because you're on the scene via a telephone.
Yeah, just because you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't affect you. And going back to Excel, I think that was, a prime example that, just we know calls didn't get through. We know calls didn't get answered. But there was just so much coming in all at once. 3 people couldn't handle it. I was in my office making outgoing calls and calling for helicopters because they were so busy answering the incoming calls. They couldn't make outgoing calls. And, just, again, anybody that thinks that did not affect those 3 individuals there is fooling themselves. Yeah. One of them had a relative that worked out there at the time, so, but I think,
that became personal real fast, didn't it?
At the end of the day, when it's all said and done, again, going back to what I said earlier with our working relationships, we had just implemented a mass casualty protocol in the county. We tweaked it a little bit after Excel because we saw some things that didn't work as well as they should have, but we had just put that plan in place like 2 weeks before that. It got implemented. There were 14 people wounded at Excel. We had 17 ambulances and 2 helicopters there. All those patients were off the grounds on their way to the hospital within 45 minutes. That speaks to how well this county works together and gets things accomplished. And then to go to the briefing afterwards with all the 3-letter agencies that were there, and to have the FBI say that was the smoothest active shooter situation we've ever been involved in. Speaks well of how our people in this county, our first responders, work together to get things done in the best way possible. And I think that's a nice thing to walk away with, is that I was part of those plans and those systems that work so well.
If you're sitting here and you have an open position, obviously you had said that you had 3 and you hired 2, but 1. Okay, so if somebody's listening to this program right now and they're asking themselves, because they're in a different community doing the same job, or even not chose at this point in time to pursue a career in communications, what would you have to say to them about why they should consider this occupation first, and second, why Harvey County?
Well, I think, we've had people come in to the job like, oh, I want to be a police officer, I want to be a paramedic, I want to be a firefighter, and they're still dispatching. They find their niche there, that this is something they really want to do because it is rewarding. It is a great job. It's just like everything else. It's not great all the time, but there are enough good moments to make people want to stay and keep doing it, and to understand that how valuable and important this role is in our communities. That people call for help. They want someone on the other end of the phone that understands, that cares, and is going to get the help there to help you out. And I think for people to want to come in and say, I want to be a part of that, yes, you're going to have to work nights and evenings and weekends and holidays. That's just the nature of the beast. Somebody's got to be there 24/7, 365 to answer the phones. Yeah. And, that I think that's one of the biggest things. People want a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday job. This ain't it. Yeah. But this has a lot to offer. And, at the end of the day, what's going to give you a bigger reward, saving a life or flipping burgers at McDonald's?
Okay, Don, a question that I feel like I should ask, because I was not as aware of what you all do before the interview. So I want to ask the right questions, right? But I don't know if I'm not asking the right question. So is there anything that I should have asked, or you feel that I should have asked, just in my own ignorance of not understanding fully coming up to this interview?
Well, I was thinking about that just a minute ago, and I think if there's one thing I'd like to say in regards to things we've talked about earlier is, we talked a little bit about the respect of first responders and how they interact with people. And I think if there's one thing that our people are looking for is that respect. We're not considered first responders in every realm. The Congress has been working on it for 7 years to get us designated as first responders along with the rest. They're still working on that. But when it comes right down to it, just, people wouldn't necessarily yell and scream and call a police officer or a firefighter names standing face to face with them, but they seem to think it's okay when they call 911 if they're not getting the answer they like. And the thing that comes to mind specifically to me is controlled burns. We get calls from farmers from time to time, and we tell them they can't burn. They'll call our dispatchers every name in the book. And they need to understand, we're not making this up. We're telling you rules that the fire chiefs themselves have laid down that say you can burn under these conditions, you can't burn under these conditions. And when we've got a extreme or catastrophic forecast day coming up, and we tell you can't burn for 2 days before that, that's not something that we made up. That's something the fire chiefs have said. And I think people need to understand that is we're just the messenger. But people get mean and nasty about it, and that's just because you can't see their face doesn't mean that you can open up on them like that.
And not only that, but the reason they're there, going all the way back to the beginning of our conversation, is because they want to help individuals in their time of need That's why
we're telling you no, so you're not burning your house, your neighbor's house, and the next 2-3 down the road burned down as well. So and everybody said, "Oh, that won't happen to me." Well, we thought XL would never happen to us either.
Yeah,
and
or
it did.
Anything for that matter. Going back to being the first responders, you said something that I was ignorant of. You all aren't considered first responders in the same way, form, and fashion? We
are at the national level. We're still considered clerical, going way back. And the Congress has been trying for 7 years to get us moved into protective services, which is where fire and EMS and medics are. And it's been that part of the bill has been stripped out every single time by Congress, but they keep going back and trying again. Our two national associations, APCO and NENA, are both behind it, pushing it. The representative from California is actually a former dispatcher that's started this push, Representative Torres, and she's got a lot of backing for it. But for some reason, when it comes up for a vote, for some reason that piece keeps getting taken out. But we'll keep plugging away at it and hope it comes to fruition. But is that going to mean we're all going to get raises and better benefits? No, but at least recognizing that we're in the same pot with the rest of these guys that we work with hand in hand day after day.
Yeah. Well, and I would think every individual that I've had on here who is a first responder talks about trauma and the experiences that they're left with and have to navigate personally. Some say, well, I've got my own personal thing I do. There's these resources here. There's not a lot of resources there. For us as individuals who are there and our daily life deals with either an individual that's at their worst moment or somebody in their time of need, or I'll just call it in their time of crisis, right? You're dealing with people, oftentimes the first person to pick up the phone in that person's moment of crisis. And so that's got to affect people. I mean, I go back to I almost feel like we're like, if you're listening to this podcast, you're like, man, I don't know if I want that job. You know what I mean? And I don't know how to change that, because I don't think I don't think it's that we're not selling a position here, right? It takes a person that wants to serve in that way to be able to sign up to do so, and this is just another way to do so. But how do you personally, or have you personally in your own life, learn to mitigate, or for lack of a better word, deal with things that the average public just doesn't have to deal with?
Well, I think first of all, I wanted, we were talking about selling the job. I mean, let's be honest. Those major incidents don't happen every day. They happen a lot, but not every day. So, it's not like we're just, trauma after trauma after trauma in around here. Even though we are one of the busiest counties in the state for 911, we're like 5th in the state for 911 calls outside the Kansas City area. Wow. So we are, for a small county, we are extremely busy. But, there's a lot of barking dog calls, a lot of accident calls, things like that. The domestics, the homicides, the active shooters, fortunately, are pretty rare, but they do happen. So we got to prepare people to face those. From to answer your question, I think just knowledge. There's a process out there called critical incident stress management that's been around for many years. That was a process of peer support started by a paramedic in Maryland, Washington, D.C. area. I teach that. I've been involved in that almost as long as I've been here in Newton. But, just first of all, knowledge, knowing what are the triggers, what to watch out for, and the steps to take care of yourself. Having someone you can talk to, which may or may not necessarily be a spouse, but just someone that's been there, done it, has a T-shirt that you can talk to, that understands where you're coming from. If it's a peer, a counselor, a pastor, chaplain, whatever. But just knowing that do not keep it bottled up inside. And I guess right now I'm speaking to the first responder world out there. That's the worst thing they can do, is to keep it bottled up inside. They need to find a healthy, safe way to let it out. Talk, taking care of yourself, eating the right foods, kind of thing. Exercise, that kind of thing. I mean, people, oh, great, exercise, don't want to hear that. But really, that's taking care of yourself is a way to mitigate those critical incident stress symptoms and stay with it.
Stay with it. Yeah, because I would think that if you didn't do that, eventually you hit a burnout point.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Your mind and your body can only take so much, and it literally can kill you if you let it go. You don't take care of it. So I think just knowing that and being able to do CISM debriefings with people and talk to them and give them the tips of here's how to take care of yourself, and if this doesn't go away, then go pay somebody to take care of you that knows what they're doing.
Yeah. Hey, you brought something up that now I think we could do another podcast over of an hour, but you said you taught these classes, or you're educating these classes. You can help with this. Is there, I mean, can you go without saying that everybody that is a first responder or deals with people in their moment of crisis are affected in some form or fashion or another? I mean, is there somebody that can just say, that doesn't bother me, or is that just a denial?
I think anybody that says that's fooling themselves. And we realize that everybody is affected by stress different ways. There's a lot of different ways of triggering that reaction. But to say that nothing ever bothers you, or that won't ever bother you, that's a fallacy. Again, wake up, realize that, and take steps to deal with it before it's too late.
Yeah. Okay, Don. I wish we could stay here forever. I do. I appreciate you. I think this is the first time that we've ever sat down and just had a conversation. I know I have met you before. I know I have. I do try to keep a watch on what's just going on in our local community, and I see you oftentimes talking to one government entity or another, to be able to just help them learn and be educated and realize the value that they have right here nestled in Harvey County under your watch. I just got to say in advance, I appreciate you for your service, and I know that there was no way we could have covered everything in an hour-long podcast, but just apologize in advance for my ignorance. I hope I was able to ask all the questions, and I don't know if you've watched a podcast before, but what we always do is we give the guest the last word to speak directly to the hearts and the minds of everybody listening. So I figure you got the floor, and you can take as much time as you want and need.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to come here and enlighten everybody about 911 a little bit. Hopefully they learn something. Hopefully they gain some valuable information here. I would just say that I'm very proud of the staff that we have here. They're a great bunch of people, and they deserve any pat on the back they can get, which doesn't come very often, but we appreciate that. They're a great bunch of men and women, and do a great job every day. And right now we're needing some help. So if anybody wants to come and join our team, the ksgovjobs.com is the site, or Indeed. The county recognizes that also. We're glad to take your application and bring you in for testing and interviews. But I'd say, again, they are the first responders, and they deserve a pat on the back and a thanks for the job that they do, in addition to the first responders you see on the street.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I appreciate you, Don. Like I said, we could talk for a lot longer than we've done. I hope that people do listen to this podcast, and those that have a heart to serve and the courage to serve will reach out and consider doing what you do. because I believe that everybody, including yourself in your department, are a valuable asset and resource to our community. We can't thank you enough. I personally thank you. There's never been a time that I didn't need help, wasn't able to dial those 3 numbers, or somebody else needed help, able to dial those 3 numbers, and somebody was there, and somebody ensured that the help that I needed or somebody else needed in our moment of crisis was there to do it. So thank you, Don.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'd just like to thank everybody for listening to this HCTalk podcast. As always, I was your host, Lance Gormley, and our guest on the program today was Don Gruver, who is the Director of Communications for Harvey County, Kansas. Have a good one, everybody.